Hello, hello. Good evening. Greetings from Education USA, Accra and Kumasi. We are here again today, Thursday, August 20th. As usual, we come your way every Thursday, and each day we feature a new school. So you can learn a lot about US institutions and about the application process. My name is Bernice Afute. Today we are joined by a very powerful man. I like the word powerful. His name is Mr. Marcus Burns. He is the Associate Director of Admissions at Williams College. He will be talking about the application process with emphasis on deadlines and timelines. How should you tackle the application process? But what time should you do what? Before I turn over to Mr. Burns, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ms. Marilyn Owusu, who is the Education USA advisor, or she's actually one of the advisors in Kumasi. The other lady is Ms. Margaret Nyako. And myself, I'm Bernice Afute, yours truly. We help you to understand the application process and also to successfully apply to colleges and universities in the US. Without wasting time, I will turn over to Mr. Burns. And once he's done, I will come back so we will see what questions you will have so we can all look at them and then answer appropriately. Whilst the presentation is ongoing, feel free to leave your questions and comments in the comment box, and we will look at them one after the other when Marcus is done. Mr. Marcus, I turn you over to your audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you all so much for logging in and coming to hear a bit during this talk. I'm excited to talk about the application process in general, as well as to talk a bit about Williams College and let you know some more about a great liberal arts college that we are, and then also to answer your questions. I know this, in all years, this is a time where students are definitely thinking a lot about what's going on and thinking about your future. And so we want to make sure that I'll try to answer as many questions as I can on this time. So I've put together a PowerPoint for you. And so with the PowerPoint, I think hopefully it will be helpful to kind of walk through and think about some of the things that I'm planning on talking about here and thinking about just the college application process and how you do that. And so I'll try to talk about this for somewhere 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'll have some time after that to talk specifically about Williams College. And then, as Ms. Bernice mentioned, we'll get to Q&A, the fun part, right, where it all begins. So thank you again. And so the college application process is a very personal process for everyone. Okay, so however other people's processes have gone, or if you've talked to people that have gone through and asked them advice and things, that's always good. It's always important to get that advice. But this is a process that you need to make sure you as the student are leading. Okay, so that you are making sure you're doing all of the research that's going to be important for you so that you can be happy with the eventual outcome of where you end up. All right, so obviously some of you are looking at coming to the United States, and that's great. There are so many wonderful, wonderful options in the United States of colleges and universities of all different styles. So I know that can be a little bit confusing sometimes and might be feel a bit daunting. So I know you have some great representation from all different kinds of colleges in the US that are doing these talks. So thank you, Education USA, for putting these together and helping your students in this way. And so there will be opportunities to hear about choosing the right fit and things like that. So I won't go a ton into that, but I do want to make sure that I stress and mention that this is something that you need to do research for yourself. It's a time to be introspective, a time to really think about yourself, your journey to where you are right now, and then where that trajectory and where that journey continues on. And then look into it as to how can these institutions around the world help you, right? So what do they offer that's going to help you along your path, right? So I think that's something that's very important to think about. And so while you'll have all different factors that will go into that, and for each of you, those factors are going to be different, what's going to be a best fit for you. I think when we're talking about this and we're talking about the essentials and the timelines and deadlines, now that's not necessarily going to have anything to do with your fit or what you're looking at, okay? The deadlines are the deadlines, all right? The timelines, it is the timeline. It's when the colleges say that you need to get your applications in. So we want to make sure that we think about that and we recognize that, and then we operate within all of those kind of regulations and procedures. So one thing that I think can be very helpful, and I really encourage students to do generally, is when you're doing your process, so you'll have that introspective time, you'll think about kind of the must-haves, if you will, or the things that are very important to you, kind of personal things. And then it's also, again, important to think about the actual application timeline, application requirements, and kind of mapping those out for yourself so you make sure you hit all of those and that you get all of the materials you need in a timely fashion to the different schools that you're interested in. So one thing I think can help students is if you come up with some type of document or spreadsheet where you actually just list out the different things that are important to think about in the process, and then you can fill in how that is represented at each particular school or what each school's deadlines are. So I think it's a little bit easier to look at, so that we can do here. All right, so this is an example that I think of a spreadsheet that you can use and I encourage students to do. So as you see on the left, you can do the different schools that you're most interested in, or just the different schools that you're doing your research on. And then we'll fill the columns in with pieces that are going to be important to this actual just application process to make sure you can put yourself in the running to be admitted to these schools and end up attending them. So a main thing, one, we're going to always start with deadlines. As I mentioned, that's so important here. And you have to make sure that you are hitting those deadlines at schools, okay? Because in this year, with everything going on in the global pandemic, you know, schools like Williams will certainly try to work as much as possible with you, but the deadlines, we've already built in kind of very tight deadlines to be able to make sure that students can apply, and then we have enough time to read through those applications and make all of the decisions that we need to admit students. So you'll want to really make sure that you know those deadlines as soon as possible. So if you haven't already started doing this, you should be going into schools' websites and looking up what their different application deadlines are, as well as their required application materials. So there's many different kinds of deadlines. And so if you've done your research, you probably have seen there's different kinds of early deadlines, which tend to happen a bit earlier in the year. So for this, for instance, you see like school A here has ED and RD. So ED stands for early decision. And so early decision schools are generally going to be binding, meaning that you sign in the application saying that if you are accepted and admitted to that school, that is the school where you will attend. There's also other options called early action, like you see here, I listed as an example for school C, EA. Early action, those are schools where it's a time you can apply earlier in the year, but you are not now bound to go to that school. It's not required that you attend there if you get admitted. Right? So those are two of the main early deadlines that you might see: early decision and early action, the two main application types that you can use there. And then some schools, as you see here listed on school B, might have an early decision 2 round, or an additional early round that's going to be in there between an early decision and a regular decision. So you'll want to make sure you know which application deadlines the school does have, and then also do a little bit of research on the website and even email admission counselors at the school to find out if there is any benefit to applying within a particular time. So what I mean by that, some schools, if you are a student requiring financial aid, you have to apply during the early decision round in order to receive financial aid, because they may have a limited budget that they will give out early, and then once that's gone, that is gone. Williams College, we're not a school like that. So we're fortunate enough to have the resources that students can apply whenever works for them. and you will still get the same financial aid, but there certainly are many schools that will have to give out their aid in the early round. So that's something important to think about and to know. And then also you want to be able to know when you need to submit everything by, so you can work backwards from there to make sure you're reaching out to get all of the recommendations and the various required materials. And then lastly, there are going to be some schools that have a rolling admission period where the application opens at some point, generally in August or so, and then you can submit your application at any point in there, and then the school will review your application and get back to you kind of on a rolling basis. They don't have one time where they get back to you. So deadlines, important to write. Another piece is going to be just the actual applications. So when you're looking at different schools, it's important to come up with a list of schools of different sizes, different types, to give yourself options. And so when you're doing that, it's important to know which applications they actually will accept, because that can help you if you have, several schools, like even just on this list, right? If you have 4 schools that you end up being your main schools that you're most interested in, then you'll want to look at which applications they accept. So for this example that I put here, right, of these made up schools, when you're looking there, all 4 of the schools accept the common application, all right? And then 3 of them accept the coalition application, and 1 of them accepts this universal application. So if these are the 4 schools you plan on applying to, it may be better for you to select the common application as what you put your time into, because every school you're interested in takes that application, right? All 4 of these schools that you're thinking about takes that. So that will save you some time, because if you choose to, at the beginning of your process, start the coalition application, and then that's what you're going to submit, that's great. So you can submit that to 3 of the 4 schools that you're applying to. But now that 4th school, you have to go through and do the common application. So you're now filling out 2 main applications as opposed to just 1. So I think that's why this column is helpful in my mind to figure out. And if there's one application that they all accept, then that might be the one you might want to do. Also, application supplements. This is something that the common application or the coalition or the universal, those applications, you can fill out one application and send it to multiple schools that will accept it, right? But then there is information on there, like your name, your date of birth, where you live, what school you attend, things like that, that are more objective, and those are going to be the same regardless of where you're applying. So that's how those applications are helpful and they work. You can fill that one out and send it many places. But then schools like Williams and many of these kind of selective colleges, we are creating communities on our campus. We have a holistic application process. So we want to make sure we're looking into the fit of a student that's coming to our institutions. So the application supplement allows the college to ask additional questions that help them to get to know you a bit more in the process, because these schools really do want to get to know who you are, how you would add to the community, as well as benefit from being in our communities. So that application supplement, some schools will have, some schools it might be optional, some schools might require it. But I encourage you, if a school does have an application supplement and you are seriously considering that school, it may be something that I would encourage you to do, okay, to think about doing. So even if it is an optional supplement, I think it's just another piece you can do to get you across in this process, because again, that's what our admission offices want to know, who you are and envision you on their campuses. So that's just a little tidbit of advice. I would encourage you to do it if they have it. So, but that's something to think about. And again, some schools it will be optional to do, some schools it'll be required. Some schools, it might actually depend on what kind of program you're applying to. So for Williams, you just apply to Williams College, and then you decide what you'll study when you get here. But some schools, you might actually have to apply to a particular major, a particular field of study, or some larger schools, you might actually have to apply to a particular school within a university. So that's something to think about and something you want to make sure you know if there's any additional pieces that are required. Also, testing. Testing is, it has been an important piece of the application process for a long time. And so it's important to think about that and to know if there is any testing required. All of these things, it's important to make sure you're starting early, but certainly with testing is not something that you can just decide what day you're going to take the test, right? There are certain days that the tests are offered. So if a school does require it, you want to make sure that you can register for, prepare, and then take that standardized test in time to have it sent to the school so they can evaluate. This year, many schools, including Williams, many schools are adopting a test optional policy with the pandemic and with lots of test dates being canceled. But it is important to not just assume that schools are now test optional. Make sure that you go onto each school's website to confirm all of this information, but certainly for the testing, because again, you want to give yourself time to complete that testing if you need. And then in that, you'll want to make sure standardized testing, so generally SAT or ACT, but then also as international students, you'll want to make sure you know if the school requires some type of English proficiency exam or English language exam. So these are just some ways that you might see. Some schools might not require them, English proficiency exams. Some might require it and might require particular ones, or they may have a list of different English proficiency exams that you can take. All right, but you'll want to make sure that you know what testing is required. And then some schools do still require SAT subject tests, right? And so you'll want to make sure you know if those are required, again, because you will have to register for those and prepare and take those in time. So make sure you do that, but make sure you go onto schools' websites, because many of us are using a test optional policy for this coming application cycle because of what's going on around the world. You'll also want to make sure you think about application fees, right? And if those will kind of be a burden to you, a financial burden in the process. So you'll want to know up front, what applications and these things I've talked about so far, but then also, does it cost any money to apply to this school? And if so, what is that cost? And are there fee waivers that are available? So a school like Williams, we offer fee waivers to students because we do not want an application fee to be a barrier to you applying to our school. We want to make sure that we're bringing in the best and the brightest from all over the world. So we don't want barriers like that. So we are very generous with application fee waivers for students. And so you can go on our website and type in fee waiver, and that will bring you to where you can find that. And so I'd encourage you to do that at different schools. So see if there's a fee, and then if that's going to be a burden for you, make sure you do kind of some research to see if there's a way to get a fee waiver for that. So some schools are very generous with those. Some schools might not be as such. So you'll want to find that out. And again, an easier way that you might be able to do that is when you're on the school's admission website, just type in the words fee waiver that you see there in that top box, and see what comes up and if that's available. All right, but the actual application fees are going to vary. Some schools will not have them at all. Some schools will have them and offer waivers. Some schools will just have them and they're non-refundable, and you just have to submit it if you want to apply. So that's important to know. Also very important, financial aid deadlines. So deadlines in general, but as I mentioned when talking about the actual application rounds and the deadlines for submitting your application for admission, some schools will require that your application deadline has to be in very early, or maybe right when you apply. Other schools might give you a little bit of time to fill out your admission application, and then maybe a week or a few days to then fill out the financial aid application and get that in. But it will be very important because you do not want to miss out on that. Right? You need to know if you are requiring financial aid, you need to know exactly when do they need your application so that you can be considered for that financial aid and then be able to attend the institution. So as I mentioned, some schools it will be right when the actual application deadline is, but other schools will give you a week. Some schools will give you more than a month, depending on what deadline it is. So depending on which application, if you're doing some type of early round or if you're doing regular decision, then you'll want to make sure you know what the financial aid deadline is for that particular round. Right? And then some schools for international students, they actually will just not have financial aid available. So you'll want to make sure that with this, if you have questions and things, and with all of this, certainly, you'll make sure you talk to your counselors. EducationUSA is a great resource that they can help you as you're thinking through this process in general. Okay. And then also important with that, because the deadlines are important, but then also you need to know what you need to fill out, what the schools will require, right? So some common things that schools will require for international students that are seeking financial aid might be the CSS profile, or some might require or accept the ISFA instead, so the International Student Financial Aid application. And then some schools might actually just have their own institutional form that they use. So that's really important because you want to make sure you're making yourself available to earn these institutional grants, and for the schools that have merit-based scholarships and things, you'll want to be able to make sure you put yourself in the running because you've worked very hard and you've done really well. So you'll want to make sure that they can consider you for these scholarships that they have. So just make sure you know what forms you need to fill out, and also be very responsive, right? So make sure you check your email address that you put down on all of your applications, right? Make sure you regularly check it because schools will reach out if they have a question, especially financial aid offices. If you filled out the forms and they have a question, they are going to reach out to you. Schools are not just going to give out money with questions and not even know, right? So they're going to make sure that they understand everything in there so that they're giving the right amount of financial aid. So be sure that you are filling out the correct forms on time, and then also checking your email. So if they reach out for more information, you can give that to them. And then also recommendations. And this is another piece when we are just talking about the overall timeline, the overall application process. You know, this is where you are asking someone else to help you out in this application, right? These are pieces that you cannot do yourself. You need to get teacher recommendations. Many schools will require them. A standard, many schools will ask for 2 teacher recommendations. So you'll want to make sure that you think about who you're going to ask to write those recommendations for you. Okay, so think about teachers that you've connected with. Think about teachers that have really praised your work in their class, or praised how you've done leading a particular club or organization at your school or in your community, whatever it is, right? And so you'll make sure that you need to get those recommendation letters in time. So you have to ask people so they have time to write those recommendations. Sorry, excuse me. And so here you'll see it can really depend school by school how they might do and what they might require for a recommendation. Some schools will just say we require 2 recommendations. Other schools might say we require 2, but we actually need to see 1 recommendation from a science or math teacher and 1 recommendation from a humanities teacher. So you'll want to make sure that you know what's required from the different schools that you are looking at so that you can ask the correct teachers for those recommendations. And then some other schools, similar to, you might have to apply to particular programs or fields of study. Some schools might actually, it may vary what recommendations and how many you have to submit depending on what major you will be choosing or what school you're applying to within that university. And then lastly, another piece is going to be about interviews. So some schools will require an interview in the process. And so those interviews, some schools, it might be an admission officer that you have to have an interview with. Some schools use their alumni to do those interviews and have alumni all over the world that you will have to get in touch with, or they will get in touch with you. Some schools don't use them at all because it just takes a lot of organization to get done, and not everyone will be able to get an interview. So they want to kind of take that and keep the playing field level. So it's really going to vary. Williams, we don't require interviews, but again, some schools certainly do. So you'll want to make sure you keep an eye out on that, know if a school is going to require an interview, and that way you know if it's something you have to schedule for yourself or if the admission office will reach out to you further with information on that. All right, so these are some main things that I think can be very helpful to keep track of in the application process. And then again, you can add to this, you can not do it at all, you can take from it, but I think these are some important things to think about. And then there's also going to be pieces, again, that are personal to you. So you may want to add a column that says, you know, has this particular major that I'm thinking of, and then yes or no on that. Or location may be very important to you, and you may need to be in a city, or you may want to get away and be kind of in more of a rural setting, or you want just a very residential campus. You know, so whatever the important things are to you, you can add to this kind of spreadsheet. And I think it just helps to keep all of the information in one place. And then just a few last things when we're thinking about this, and when we're thinking about timelines that you're setting up, right? Again, some pieces you will submit yourself or you will do, but then others you are required, you're needing your counselors and your teachers to help you and to set things in. So again, you want to make sure you've given them time. So these things in the application, you are submitting the application and the fee, and you're submitting your standardized test scores and doing that, and then any optional materials. But again, schools are requiring teacher recommendations, and we're requiring your transcripts and your school marks, right? And national exams and things like that for countries that have those. So those will be sent by other people. So you need to, again, make sure you're giving enough lead time so that they can get those in, and that's not holding up your application. And then lastly, a few things. Again, deadlines are so important. Please, please, please make sure you know what the deadlines are and stick to them. All right. And you may be students that I talk to a lot of students who think that they work well in the crunch, and they like to, when the time is running, that's when I really do my best work. But I would encourage you not to have that be the case for the college application. Make sure you start early, give yourself enough time, and really set realistic timelines. Make sure that you have enough time to do all of the pieces, as well as for your teachers and your counselors to do all of the pieces they need to do to make those deadlines and get your materials in on time. And so don't wait to reach out to those teachers, right? Again, start early. Don't wait to reach out to your counselors. Don't wait to reach out to EducationUSA until you get your national exam results or things like that. Do it early. They're there to help you from the beginning. So reach out very early, and they can help with lots of other tips that I can't get into and in this time, right? And that other colleges on these talks will not be able to talk about everything. Your EducationUSA advisors there are very, very helpful. They're very knowledgeable. They have relationships with counselors, admission counselors at schools all across the world. And they are people that their job is to help students that are applying to colleges in the United States, right? And so make sure that you take advantage of that. Not every country has a great EducationUSA program as you all do. So make sure that, take advantage of that, use them, reach out to them in time. And then lastly, just important to note, colleges in the US, like Williams, we want you. We want representation of the world. And we know there are very, very, very strong students in Ghana and a very, very strong education system. And students come to our campuses and really do amazing things. So we want you on our campuses. So give us the opportunity to admit you. Get your applications in on time, get everything in so that we can consider you in our pool and that we can have some of you come to our campuses and help you along in your journey. So hopefully that has all been helpful and some things to think about. And now I want to just for a bit get into talking specifically about Williams. And then as I mentioned, and as we mentioned, and Ms. Bernice said, we'll have Q&A after this. So a plug again, as you have questions, hopefully you've been writing them in and they are compiling a list, and we'll be happy to go over those. So Williams College is a liberal arts college. All right, so we are focused on educating and empowering undergraduate students to be prepared to go out and lead all over the world, to tackle challenges wherever they arise, and to really come to our campus and bring all of their perspective and learn from and with each other. All right, so when thinking about Williams, we are located in Williamstown, Massachusetts. So we are in the northwestern corner of the state of Massachusetts. So we are a residential community. We guarantee housing for all 4 years for all of our students. And our students are truly coming from all over the world. And so our location here, we are about 3.5 hours drive from both New York City and Boston, Massachusetts. So 2 major cities within the US that are just over 3 hours from us. So students certainly have access to get to those. There are buses available, some trains available to get to those different places, but our students are really spending their time on our campus. And that's what's so important to the way the learning's happening for us, is that students are really spending a lot of time around each other, right? And being forced to think about things differently and interact with each other in all types of settings on our campus. And that's really kind of, we feel, adding so much to the learning that's going on. So when you think about the actual students, there's just over 2,000 undergraduate students, and that's who we are focused on, right? So we do have 2 graduate programs, but those are very small. So compared to the more than 2,000 undergraduates we have, between the 2 graduate programs, there might be around 50 graduate students or so. So very small. We are really, again, focused on those undergraduates. And that's what you're thinking about, right? You're thinking about those years after high school where you're studying for your bachelor's and then deciding if you want to go off to another degree after that, a tertiary degree, a master's, PhD, what have you. And so our students, we really do value diversity in all senses of the word. So you see here a bit about our numbers for our students, but that diversity again is integral to the way our learning is set up, because it's so important for us to have students that are bringing all different types of perspectives, so that when you come to our campus, you're not only around people that all look and speak and think exactly like you. We think the real learning is going to come around when you are challenged in your thoughts, right? And you're having to think about either things that beliefs that you've held for a long time, or also maybe something that you just read in a journal or in a book and are now kind of comparing that to your general thoughts and having those discussions. So we really want to make sure that there are students to add to these discussions from all walks of life. And also we make sure that financial aid and kind of financial resources are important in there too, so that students, when we're looking for students all over the world, we can truly admit students regardless of their family's finances, that we do have the institutional resources to then just focus on the actual student and then meet all of their demonstrated need if there is any. Right? And we have a hefty percentage of students, as you see here, who are the first generation in their family to go to college. So that their parents did not go to college or university, and they are now being able to take advantage of this, and really kind of make that change in their life and for their family. So really very proud of that. And you see lots of countries represented, lots of languages spoken. And I'm sure when this came up, you all went right to the G and quickly looked, but Ghana is definitely one represented for us. And each year we admit some students from Ghana, and we're also very fortunate to have several Ghanaian students on our campus and doing very well. So and hence why we're on this call now, right? And we're still continuing to recruit and wanting to talk to students like yourselves. And on our overall student body, around 9% of our students are international students. And for this number, when we talk about international, that's just students that are requiring a visa to study here in the United States. So that 9% does not include students that may be that may be US citizens, but studying elsewhere in the world, right? So when you add in those students who really have had lots of formative years in other countries, but just happen to be US citizens, that number does go into the double digits and move up quite a bit. And I mentioned liberal arts. And so liberal arts is going to be focused on getting a breadth of study. So making sure that students can take all different types of classes, all different types of disciplines, and not coming in with your head down, focused on just one thing and one thing only, and that's what you do on our campus. We want to make sure that you are branching out of your comfort zone a bit, trying different things out. And again, being forced to just use your brain in different ways. And so that's happening throughout our classes and the way that our actual curriculum is set up. So we do not have a core curriculum here at Williams. We do not have any one class that all students are required to take, okay? Instead, we have lots of flexibility, right? You as the student, you have the autonomy that you are going to choose every single class that you take throughout your time at Williams. So the way it works for us is what we call divisional requirements. So some other schools may have a similar thing where they might call it distributional requirements or something like that. But it's not a core curriculum. We're not telling you exactly which classes you have to take, but we are telling you that you have to take courses in some different areas. So you see those 3 divisions listed on your screen here. For Williams, all students, regardless of what you choose as your major, are required to take at least 3 courses in each of those 3 divisions. Okay, so that's as far as Williams takes it. And so what the difference between that and a core curriculum is that there are hundreds of courses that fall into each of those 3 divisions. And now you as the student get to decide which courses you will take to fulfill your requirements. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. But when you look at the divisions, for instance, if you are a student and you do not like math, you don't want to take any more math classes, that falls under Division III for us. And so you do not have to take any math classes at Williams. Instead, to fulfill your Division III requirements, you can choose classes between things like biology, physics, chemistry, computer science, right? And you work with those instead as the ones that you're choosing between. So it really gives that flexibility, and students take advantage of that, right? And also with that idea of branching out and trying different things, you're actually not able to declare your major until the end of your second year, right? So whether you know it and just can't declare it, or whether you are really coming in with eyes wide open, not sure what you want to study, all students at Williams are declaring their major at the end of their sophomore year, so halfway through their time. So again, really making sure that you are able to take different classes and decide what you want to do. Because as great as your schools are, wherever they are, high schools, secondary schools just generally are not able to offer as many classes and courses and disciplines as colleges are able to. So there are going to be different fields that you just have not had any experience in. And so we don't want you to have to decide what your specialization is going to be, what that major is, before you get to try out some different disciplines. So that's why you declare at the end of your sophomore year, and it gives you lots of time. And with the flexibility that we have, more than 40% of our students actually end up choosing 2 majors. So a double major, 2 different specificities that they want to do. So we have more than 35 different majors that our students can choose between, and everyone would choose one. And then again, more than 40% of our students choose more than one. And then you also can supplement your learning with what we call concentrations. And so if you've heard of minors at other schools, concentrations are Williams' version of minors because they're fewer courses than a major will be to complete, but they're unique in that they are all interdisciplinary. So they're not just a shortened version of one of the majors. Instead, they have courses that they'll pull from several different departments to look at that particular topic from many different angles. All right, and then even though you're declaring that specialization halfway through your time, you're still going to be in small classes taught by professors from the moment you step on our campus. So as you see there, student faculty ratio of 7-to-1. So our professors are here and they are teaching their classes. Every single class you take, 100% of them at Williams are taught by these professors, okay? And the average class size is just 13. So really keeping the classes very small at Williams, because that enables us to make sure that our students can really speak up and really make the most out of their education throughout their time here. And when you think about that education and how it's mapped out, we actually have a 4-1-4 calendar. So we operate with 2 semesters, 2 main semesters, where you take 4 courses in each of those semesters. And students are required to then 4 per semester, which is 8 per year over 4 years. It's 32 semester-long courses that you take to go towards your graduation requirements. But then in the middle, we have what we call winter study. And so that is not a semester-long course. That's actually just the month of January, about 3.5 weeks in the month of January, where all students take 1 class, and that class is actually taught pass-fail. So students are coming in, and it's another opportunity for us to really encourage students to branch out, to think about things differently and try out different courses. So you might be in class generally 6 to 8 hours per week. And these classes are taught by Williams professors, but then they're also taught by Williams alumni and kind of working professionals that are experts in some field and don't have kind of a full time to teach full time, but they can create a class for 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks, and they do so. And then they come and teach that here at Williams for our students to take advantage of. Right. And so also during winter study, because you're only in class for those few hours every week, our students, it's a great time for real community building, for students to catch up with friends and deepen those relationships, or to get involved in some new things that you may not have experience in, like winter. We have seasons here and we have snow here. And so I'm not sure if any of you have skied before, but we have mountains around us. And so some students might take advantage of that winter time in January to learn to ski or learn to snowboard or go out hiking in the snow. So there's lots that you can do, but it's really a great time that our students are able to fully dive into this community and really get to know each other. And so that's kind of one time of the year, right? But then we also, as I said, small classes are vital to the learning that we have here. And I want to make sure you all know about the Williams tutorial system. So Williams tutorials are classes that are just as you see there, 2 students and the professor. That is your class for the entire semester. So an amazing type of class, a very powerful type of class, as Ms. Bernice used that nice word earlier, because really, this is a class that's run by the students. So the professor is there. They are the expert in the class. They are deciding the readings. They're creating the syllabus. But then the students are the ones who are leading the discussion when you meet in that class. So generally in a tutorial, they are modeled on this Oxford style of learning, which is going to be small classes they do at Oxford. But we took it even further at Williams, and we said every single one of these tutorials is going to be the 2 students and the professor. And so what really separates Williams and is unique to Williams in the US context of schools is that our tutorials are offered in every single academic department, and they are offered to students at all levels. So from the moment you step on our campus, you can actually be involved in these tutorial style classes, okay? And so that's important for our students to be able to take those and to be able to be involved in those. And so it's always going to be students working on independent work, leading the discussion between you, but also making sure that you are the ones speaking up, that you're working on those communication skills, you're working on your writing, you're working on your independent analytical thought, and that can follow you. So they're not mandatory, but more than half of our students will choose to take these kind of tutorials. And then a few other quick things we want to get through before we get to Q&A is research. Research is so important to us, and I want to make sure that you know that that's available at liberal arts colleges. We do research at liberal arts colleges and at a very high level. So for Williams, more than 40% of our students actually participate in research every year, and that's across the disciplines. So our professors are here, they're teaching, but they're also continuing to stay experts in their field, and they look to you, the undergraduate, to be the one doing that research with them. So for our students, when you do research at Williams, you actually get paid for that research as well. So you get the great experience, but you also get money along with that. And so a good amount of our students end up getting published before they even graduate, because the professors do consider you a thought partner. And when they go off and publish, your name will go along with them. Study away is also very important. I know you're considering studying in the US already, but also international students at Williams can study and see the rest of the world as well. So we have more than 200 programs across the globe that our students can do. And one in particular to highlight, you see there, is the Williams Exeter program at Oxford. And so Williams is one of 2 schools in the United States that has a relationship where our students go for an entire academic year and study at Oxford University and are fully matriculated students. So that's really important because they can take advantage of any classes that they want, they can join any clubs and activities, and they're just fully enrolled students for that year. So a great opportunity for you to think about. Also, you want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with amazing people. And so that starts with our entry system, where we bring students in, and there will be some older students that we call junior advisors that have gone through Williams for a few years, and they are there to help you adjust and just be sounding boards for you, be kind of a little bit older figure that's there, not to get you in trouble by any means or tell on you, but to be there to help you because they've already gone through Williams for a few years, and to help connect you with resources on our campus. And a main resource on our campus is going to be our 62 Center. So making sure that we're not just thinking about things here, but we're also doing things, trying things. So I talked about the research, but also our Career Center works with all of our students to help you find internships and to help you find jobs and connect with graduate schools and all of that. So our students end up doing very well after Williams and are prepared to take on any challenges because they've been able to take advantage of all these things I've talked about so far throughout their time, to be in small classes, to get to know their professors, to do research, right, to lead in clubs and organizations on our campus. And so they're going off to great outcomes. And here are some of the most frequently attended graduate schools for our students, some of the things our students are doing within 6 months of graduation. And then we have a holistic process in our admissions. So what that means is we're looking at many different things. So not just one particular piece that's going to guarantee acceptance to Williams. We're creating a community. We're looking at all aspects of who you are as a person, so a student, but then also outside of the classroom and ways you spend your time there, what your teachers and counselors are saying about you. These are the applications that we accept, but please go on our website, as I said, right? Go on schools' websites and see all of the required pieces. And then just to hammer and make sure that you know, Williams does have that test optional policy for this year. year. And these are some of our different deadlines. And then lastly, affordability is so important. We want to, again, make sure that we are bringing students from all walks of life, the best and the brightest from all over the world, and making sure it's affordable. So we will meet 100% of the demonstrated need for every single student that we admit. And so when you look at our overall student body, it's more than half of our students receiving aid. But when you go further and look at our actual international students, more than 60% of them do receive aid. And you see that average aid award for international students. So we are truly one of the most generous schools in the United States for international students. Really proud of that. And then one last thing on that, you see there, some of your eyes might have gone straight to that word free, right? I would go to that. I like that. So really proud that Williams, every single student who receives financial aid, Williams pays for all of their books and materials necessary to take every single class throughout your 4 years at Williams. So it may not be something that you're thinking about when thinking of the cost of college, but books can be expensive. And so Williams has really put its money where its mouth is and said, we really encourage you to take all kinds of classes. We want to bring students from all walks of life to our campus and encourage them to take different classes. So we're not going to let books be a barrier to that, so that truly every student and all the different perspectives on our campus can be represented in every single class and in every single academic discipline on our campus, because Williams is paying for the books of more than half of our students. So hopefully that is helpful. And now we can get to question and answer. But thank you so much again for listening and for kind of hearing a bit about Williams and the process. And I'm happy to kind of talk more and see what we can answer.
Wow. If we were in a session, like an in-person session, I would say, can you give him a clap? But now we can't even do that. Thank you so much, Marcus, for this wonderful presentation, taking us through the application process and how we should plan to get those things out to the schools we're applying to. And also for taking time to share a lot about Williams with us. Anytime I see this, I feel like, oh, I wish I were 18. I will go back to school. So thank you. Now we will take questions. We have a lot of questions. We will see how many we can work on before time is up. So somebody is asking that you explain the differences between you mentioned 3 different kinds of ways people can apply. You mentioned the universal application, the coalition, and then the common app. If you could please throw a little more light on which is what.
Sure, thank you. Yes, great question. And so those applications, the way it works is in some countries, right, if you're applying to higher education, every school will have their own application. So if you want to apply to 10 schools, you have to fill out each of their own individual applications. And that used to be the case here in the United States. And still some schools do have their own application. But for some years now, schools have kind of signed on to these several different applications where the idea is you fill out one application and then can send it and submit it to multiple different schools. So in terms of the applications that I listed there, with the common application and the coalition and the universal college application is another style. The common application has the most schools in the United States that will accept it, right? But there's also other options that you can take. And so the coalition and the universal are some of them, and there can be some other applications as well. And so the idea is that you choose which application you want to fill out, and then once you've filled out the many pages of that particular application, it's basically, it takes a copy of that and we'll just send it to the different schools that you select in there. So you don't have to keep filling out all of the same information. So that's what those are. And so that's why it's important to know which applications the different schools you are interested in will take, because the idea is just to help you save some time on your end so that you don't have to keep typing in your name and your birth date and your school and your address and different things like that. They're all captured on that application, and then you can easily just submit it to many different places and duplicate it that way. Hopefully that makes sense.
A lot. Thank you. We also have a lot of questions on scholarships and funding. I will read just about two so that we can go to other questions. What do you consider in awarding need-based funding or scholarships at Williams? And then another says, do you have full scholarships? What are the requirements?
Great question. So when we talk about institutional financial aid for Williams, our financial aid is all need-based. So we do not have what we call merit-based financial aid. So we do not have academic scholarships that we might offer to students that have certain exam results or certain grades at their school, or every student that is the valedictorian will get a scholarship. It doesn't work that way for us. All of our aid is going to be what we call need-based. So being need-based, it means we have to determine if you need money to come to our school or if you can pay. So there are some students, right, that have lots and lots of money and their families can afford to pay the $70,000 US per year to send to an institution like Williams, right? But there are many students that cannot afford that. I could not afford to pay for my child to spend $70,000 every year by any means, right? So I would be applying for financial aid to send my child to Williams. And so that's where those forms that I mentioned, you'll fill out a form and the colleges will basically look at your family's income. And so different countries will do it differently. Some countries you file taxes within your country. And so you have some type of form you can send to the college. So they will require that so that they can look within the context of your country and see what funding you have available. And then they have all kinds of calculations that they'll do. And then they'll take the cost of the school. So say, just for numbers to be easy, say it's $50,000. And when you send in your tax documents or your pay stubs, if you're, some families will not, or countries and different things will not have tax documents, but instead they will put bank statements or pay stubs from their work. When you send those in, that will come up with how much your family can reasonably afford, and say that is $10,000. Then they will take the $50,000, that's the cost, subtract the 10, and now that's $40,000. So then the school will base their financial aid on that $40,000 in a need-based example. So like Williams, we would meet all of that $40,000, 100% of it, right? Mostly with what's called grants, which are money that you do not have to pay back, right? Scholarships are a type of grant, money that you generally will not have to pay back. But some schools, and this is important to talk with your EducationUSA advisors and others, some schools will not meet all of that amount. Right. So for the example I gave, if it says that you would need aid for $40,000, some schools might only give you $20,000, and then you have to figure out how to come up with the rest, or they will put lots of loans or things like that in there. But that's how it's kind of factored in. They'll look at what your finances are and we'll work with you to figure out how they do that. And I'm sorry, there was a second piece of, full scholarships. So with that, yes, Williams does have students that are fully aided, but those are the students that truly just family-wise, everything says that they cannot afford to come to Williams without the aid. So Williams meets 100% of it. So more than 17% of our overall student body has this full aid where they are paying absolutely nothing to come to Williams. And that includes transportation to campus, that includes books, that includes healthcare, that includes your food, your housing, all of it is included in that comprehensive cost. So close to 20% of our students are paying absolutely nothing to come. So really generous and kind of continuing that.
So we can confidently say Williams can give you a full ride.
You can. If you're driving around in a Range Rover and things, you cannot confidently say that, but
no.
But if there is the need, you can confidently say that Williams will meet it. And are proud to be happy.
People, you can hear that. You just need to show that you deserve it. But Williams is capable of meeting your full need. Somebody had asked a question about the full cost of attending Williams. I think you mentioned about 70. So if you can just, somebody is asking about the full cost of attending Williams.
Yes, so thank you. So So for the full cost of attendance, that's going to be around just over $70,000 US per year. And so a little bit of it will vary by student, because when we think about that cost of attendance, we think about the tuition and room and board. So those are two things, right? So tuition, which for a school like Williams and many colleges like us in the United States, tuition is tuition. It's not going to vary based on what classes you decide to take or what majors you decide to take. So as I mentioned, 40% of our students choose 2 majors, right? And add that, but that doesn't add any cost for you there. So that's important to know. You challenge yourself as much as you want. So we have that tuition, room and board, and then on top of that, then you have to get to our campus, right? And so it's a little bit more expensive to get to our campus from Ghana than it might be from New York State, which is right next door to us and an easy drive, right? So kind of that's factored in, and all of that's factored in. So in total, it's around $74,000. And then Williams, we lump that whole number in, and that's what we then consider when looking at your financial aid. So in terms of, as Ms. Bernice mentioned, showing that you deserve it and you earn it, that's going to be in the application. So the aid is going to be the aid that's given based on finances. You don't control your family's finances necessarily, right, in that way, but you do control the way that you fill out your application, right, and how you act in your school so that your teachers are talking about you in particular ways and really highlighting all the amazing things about you. So that's how you show it. But then the need will be the need that it is, and we'll meet 100% of it.
Great. I have another question here on the test optional. So somebody is saying, if a school says, asking, if a school says I'm test optional, does it mean that a student can be considered for scholarship as well, even though the person hasn't taken the standardized test?
That's a great question. And so, yes, at least for Williams, that's what it means, right? So when we say test optional for this year, it's a direct response to the global pandemic. And we know many students, just test dates have been canceled worldwide for many students, and they're not able to take it. So we do not want that to be a barrier, because that's something out of your control. So when we have this test optional for this year, it truly is test optional. So that means there still will be many students that have taken testing already and will submit it in the application. And if that's you, you can certainly do that. If you've already taken testing and you're happy with your testing and want to submit it, we will still review testing as we have done for many years within our holistic process. But the test optional piece means that it's not actually a requirement for this year. So we will admit students this year that do not have testing in their file. All right. And so you will not at all be held at a disadvantage if there is no testing in your file this year. So know that. So you can think about it for yourself. If testing kind of opens up and you're able to take tests in Ghana and you feel that you want to take it, then go ahead and do it, right? But for Williams, it's truly not required for this year.
Okay.
But a great question, and ask that at schools.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, another question. Does Williams support students in giving internships?
Yes, internships are very important. So kind of, as I said a little bit towards the end of the presentation, we want to make sure that we are connecting you with opportunities to try things out for yourself, to get out, to experience the world, and to put all of these amazing skills that you're working on and honing throughout your time on our campus into practice, right? To figure out for yourself, not what someone back home has told you you might be interested in and should try out, or not, but not necessarily just what people on our campus or your professors or anyone is telling you to do, but truly what you want to do. So our career center is a major way of how students do get connected with these internships. And that's important to know. So more than 80% of our first year students actually are taking part in career center programming. So that might be job fairs. The career center brings loads and loads of companies and organizations and foundations and things to Williams that are all looking to recruit Williams students, right? They'll help you. They can help you with resume writing. They can help you with interview tactics and things like that, and prepare. So whatever is going to be useful for you, the student, they'll do. And then also another very important thing, especially as international students, for those of you that are not US citizens, Williams has institutional funding available to help pay students for internships, right? Because more and more internships are not coming with any kind of money. So if you're looking to do something over the summer, say, right, and you're looking to stay here in the United States and do an internship over the summer, you have to figure out where you're going to live, how you're going to eat for those months that you're doing the internship. And so if that company is not paying you for that, or some companies just cannot because of immigration issues, visa and things like that with working, it's great that Williams is a place that has funding available that you can get your funding from the college, and then you can apply to internships saying, I already have my funding taken care of. I just want to come and work. And that's helping lots of our students to find those. And so we have our International Student Services Office here at Williams that works with all of our international students with immigration issues, with visa processing, all of that. And they are really working with students to help you find funding and help you find internships to make sure you can have those opportunities.
Wow, time runs so fast when we are having fun. I will take one more question before we wrap up. How does Williams respond to racism?
You asked that right at the end when we're rushing. how am I supposed to answer that quickly? So I will say, just from the get-go, and you can go on our website even, and there's statements from the college, statements from the president of the college about Williams' commitment to breaking down barriers and fighting racial injustice around the globe and around the U.S. And so that is something very important. So it starts off and has started off and been the case for many decades here, just starting off on our campus, right? So bringing students to our campus, that it is going to be a safe space, a safe educational learning space for you. So all we can do is start within our own community and hold ourselves to very high standards and a kind of a code of ethics on our campus to be a good citizen of the world, and holding each other accountable that way and not standing for any intolerance, racial or otherwise in there. And then from there, hopefully branching out so that our students, as they go out and lead in the world, can also be those change agents in the world, right? And bring that ethos that they've kind of really taken to heart while here on our campus to their next settings whenever they leave here and as they go out into the world on internships and grad schools and things like that. But then also on top of that, being a place for discussion. That's so important, where lots of times it's just the discussion, the disagreements, there's no discussion being had. People aren't sharing their perspectives. You're not open to others' perspectives. And so that's something as well, that discourse is really encouraged on our campus, and always having opportunities for our students to speak up about different issues, whether that be issues on our campus or issues just going on all over the world, right? And so making sure there's always that students feel that they can be involved in that discussion. And then also just as an institution, putting institutional funds towards fighting discrimination around the world as well. So whether that's the college has committed to giving funds to organizations and things that are fighting racial inequalities around the world. And so just as from the top down, from the institution saying, we are so committed to this that we're actually going to put funds towards it and work to identify organizations and foundations that are doing this critical and vital work and doing a small part in putting some money towards that.
Wow, thank you so much. All too soon, we have to wrap up here. Remember to look on the page. We have left our contact information for both Education USA Accra and Kumasi. And if you desire to follow up with Mr. Burns, you can also reach out to him. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer questions on Williams, but feel free to reach out to Education USA for general questions. I mean, general questions on application to US schools. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Same time next week, we will be back with one more school. Every time we keep doing it, right? Thank you. You've been patronizing it. You've been sending very excellent questions. We love them. Keep them coming and keep working with Education USA. Have a good evening and stay away from COVID. Bye.